Welcome to English in Fluency, the place where we move beyond the textbook to explore the big ideas that shape our world, and in doing so, shape our English. I'm your host, Alex, and I'm so glad you've chosen to spend this time with me. Whether you're on your daily commute with headphones as your sanctuary, enjoying a quiet cup of coffee as the day begins, or simply seeking a moment of thoughtful reflection, I invite you to settle in and listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole mind and your heart. Before we begin, I want you to just take a moment with me, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, just for a second. Pause. Let's start not with a lesson, but with a feeling. Have you ever found yourself in a quiet moment, perhaps looking out a window or waiting for a kettle to boil, and you feel a strange, restless pull, an almost magnetic urge in your hand to reach for the familiar weight of your phone? You're not even sure what you're looking for, but the motion is automatic, a modern reflex. You open an app, and the world rushes in. A world of vibrant colors, endless updates, and silent stories scrolling past your eyes. In that moment, you are both connected to everything, and perhaps disconnected from the very moment you are in. If that feeling is familiar to you, then you are in exactly the right place. Today, we are diving deep, head first, into a subject that has become as much a part of our environment as the air we breathe. Social media. I'm talking about the vast digital universes of Facebook, the polished galleries of Instagram, the rapid-fire pulse of X and TikTok, the endless library of YouTube. These are no longer just websites or applications on our phones. They have become sprawling ecosystems where we live, where we work, where we fall in love, where we build communities, and where we construct the very story of who we are. They have fundamentally rewired the invisible threads of our society, changing the very fabric of our communication, our sources of information, and even our perception of reality and our own self-worth. But this new reality brings us to a profound and deeply personal question, one that I want you to carry with you throughout our conversation today. It's a question that may whisper in the back of your mind after you've spent an hour scrolling when you only meant to spend 5 minutes. The question is this: are we truly in control of these powerful tools? Or have they, in subtle and often invisible ways, started to control us? Are we the masters of this technology, or are we slowly becoming its servants? Take a moment to truly think about your own daily rhythm. What is the very first thing your eyes land on when you awaken? That glowing blue light that greets you even before the morning sun? What is the final image that dances before your eyes as you drift off into sleep? How many times, countless times, throughout the day does your hand instinctively reach for your phone, not out of a specific need, but out of a deeply ingrained, almost unconscious habit? These seemingly insignificant actions, these micro-behaviors, might feel harmless in the moment. But when they are repeated day after day, week after week, they compound. They are like single drops of water that, over time, can carve a canyon through stone. They sculpt our patterns of thought. They fragment our precious ability to focus, and they quietly, powerfully, influence the very foundation of how we value ourselves and our place in the world. Now, this episode is not an attack on technology. It is not about condemning these platforms or advocating for a mass exodus from our digital lives. The reality is far too complex, far too nuanced for such a black-and-white solution. Instead, this is an invitation to cultivate a powerful awareness. It's an opportunity to truly understand, perhaps for the first time, the intricate role that social media plays not just in your daily routines, but in the quiet, internal landscape of your mind. Because, whether we like it or not, social media is no longer just a simple tool we use. It has become a mirror, a vast digital mirror reflecting our lives, our society, and our humanity back at us. But here is the critical twist. It is a distorted mirror. It's a funhouse mirror. It's a mirror that we, and the invisible algorithms behind it, have meticulously edited, filtered, cropped, and curated, showing us not life as it is, but a performance of life. This leads us to one of the most significant questions we will ponder together today. A question that touches the very core of our modern identity. Is social media actively shaping who we are becoming, or is it merely amplifying who we have always been? This might sound like a philosophical debate reserved for a university classroom, but its implications are intensely practical. It directly impacts your sense of self, your daily mood, the quality of your relationships with the people you love, and the convictions you hold dear. And I know that if you are engaging with English at this advanced level, you are here for more than just verb conjugations and vocabulary lists. You are here because you want to express your unique ideas, your complex feelings, and your authentic self with clarity, with power, and with unshakable confidence in a global language. To achieve that level of mastery, we must engage with topics that are real, topics that connect to the very heart of how we live, think, and feel in this complex 21st century. So today, we will journey together beyond the superficial surface of likes and shares. We will talk about the neuroscience of habit, the psychology of emotion, the silent influence of algorithms, the construction of our digital identities, the fragility of our mental health in a hyper-connected world, and the profound power of making conscious choices. We will explore how these digital platforms are reshaping our attention spans, our methods of communication, and our potential for personal growth. And most importantly, we will discuss what we can do, starting today, to reclaim our focus, our time, and our peace of mind. Throughout our conversation, I'll be using natural, flowing, spoken English, the kind of language you would hear in a deep and meaningful discussion with a trusted friend. You'll hear idiomatic expressions, nuanced vocabulary, and reflective questions, all designed to help you not only expand your linguistic range, but also develop true fluency in a context that truly matters. Now, I invite you to find a comfortable space. Perhaps turn down the lights. Release the tension from your shoulders. This is your dedicated time. Time to reflect, to listen deeply, and to grow, both in your command of the English language and in your self-awareness. This isn't just an English lesson, it's a conversation. And our conversation begins now. Let's take a quiet moment to walk through a completely ordinary day. Not a day filled with special events, not a vacation, not a day with a looming, stressful deadline, just a regular, typical Tuesday. The sound of the alarm cuts through the morning quiet. Your eyes are still heavy, struggling to adjust to the light filtering through the window, and before your feet have even had the chance to touch the floor, Your hand, almost as if it has a mind of its own, reaches for your phone on the bedside table. It isn't a conscious decision. There was no internal debate or plan. It simply happens. The screen flares to life, a familiar, comforting glow in the dim room. You glance at the time, and then your thumb begins its morning ritual. A swipe through the lock screen reveals a cascade of notifications that accumulated while you slept. A few minutes of scrolling through emails, news headlines, and social media feeds begins. You tell yourself it's just for a moment, just to see what's happening in the world. But a few minutes, effortlessly, turns into 10, then 20. Before you are even fully awake, you are already submerged in a torrent of information from other people's lives. You're processing their vacation photos, their career announcements, their curated family moments, their political opinions. You have not yet had a single thought that was truly and completely your own. You haven't even said good morning to yourself. And yet, your mind, your most precious inner space, is already occupied by the noise of the outside world. This is the subtle genius of how social media integrates itself into our lives. It sneaks in. It does so quietly, casually, like the low hum of a refrigerator in the background that you only notice when it suddenly stops. It's not that we make a grand choice to dedicate so much of our attention to it. It simply, through repetition, becomes an ingrained habit. And like any powerful habit, the more we repeat it, the more it fades into the background of our consciousness. It becomes normal. Now, let your mind wander through the rest of this typical day. Perhaps you're in the kitchen, making breakfast. The radio is on, but your phone is right there on the counter. You get a notification, a ping, a buzz. A friend has sent a short, funny video. A news alert flashes across the screen. A new post from someone you follow appears. Without a second thought, your fingers unlock the screen. You tell yourself it's just for a second, a quick look. But what begins as a fleeting glance quickly becomes a distraction. That distraction then morphs into a detour from what you were doing, and soon enough, it becomes a significant drain on your mental energy. Your focus shatters. Your train of thought is derailed. And the most insidious part of it all is that you often don't even notice it's happening. There is a term that has entered our modern vocabulary to describe this specific behavior: doom scrolling. It refers to the act of endlessly, compulsively, scrolling through negative or emotionally taxing content, particularly news and social media posts, without any real purpose or end goal. But the interesting thing about doom scrolling is that it doesn't always feel negative in the beginning. Sometimes, it masquerades as responsibility, as staying informed. Other times, it feels like a form of relaxation, a way to numb the mind after a long day. But beneath that deceptive surface, your brain is being subjected to a relentless, unending stream of stimulation. There is no pause, no time for reflection, no sense of control. Have you ever experienced this? You pick up your phone with the intention of checking just one specific thing, maybe the weather, and you suddenly look up at the clock to find that 30 or 40 minutes have vanished, completely unaccounted for. That feeling of lost time is not a personal failure of willpower. It is the result of meticulous, sophisticated design. These applications are engineered by teams of psychologists, data scientists, and designers with one primary objective: to capture and hold your attention for as long as possible. The colorful notifications are timed strategically to trigger a dopamine response in your brain. The algorithms, the complex systems that decide what you see, are built to predict precisely what content will make you pause, what will hold your gaze for just a few seconds longer. It's nothing personal. It's simply a business model. And in this model, your attention is the product being sold to advertisers. Now, let's look even deeper, because the consequences of this go far beyond just lost time. It's about the very structure of our thought processes. Every time you scroll, every time you tap like, every share or comment, your mind is reinforcing tiny, neurological habits. Your ability to maintain deep focus becomes fragmented. Your thoughts become shorter, faster, more reactive, mirroring the bite-sized content you consume. You begin to think in the language of quick comments, memes, and 15-second video clips. Over an extended period, this constant task switching trains your brain to prefer shallow, surface-level information. It becomes genuinely more difficult to sit with a complex idea, to be still and comfortable with your own thoughts, or to immerse yourself in the deep, slow process of reading a book. Without you even realizing it, the natural rhythm of your mind, the gentle, flowing current of your attention and reflection, is being reshaped and re-engineered by the digital content you consume daily. I'm not saying this to be dramatic or to create fear. It's simply the reality of our modern technological landscape, and it's profoundly important to see this reality with clear eyes, because once we become aware of a pattern, we gain the power to change our relationship with it. But that awareness must begin with an honest, unflinching question. So, let me ask you directly, how many minutes, or perhaps even hours, of your precious day do you give away without even realizing it? Not because someone is forcing you, not because you've made a conscious decision to do so, but simply because the habit is already so deeply embedded. Because the system was so perfectly designed to create it. And here's what might be the most surprising part of this whole phenomenon. Many people, especially adults, will readily admit that they don't even truly enjoy the time they spend scrolling anymore. They do it out of a sense of routine, out of boredom, or just because it feels like what everyone else is doing. Social media has become a modern reflex. It's what we do when we're waiting in line at the grocery store, when we're tired and don't have the energy for anything else, when we feel socially awkward in a room full of people, or even when we feel a pang of anxiety. It holds out the promise of connection, but what it often delivers is mere distraction. It offers a sense of comfort, but that comfort is frequently followed by the sting of comparison. And at the end of the day itself feels busier. The mind feels louder and more cluttered, and we feel a profound sense of exhaustion, even if we haven't engaged in any physical activity at all. So, what do we do with this realization? The first step is not to panic. It is not to delete every application in a fit of frustration and run for the hills. Instead, we simply pause. We cultivate awareness. We begin to observe ourselves with a sense of gentle curiosity, not with harsh judgment. Because the moment you start to see just how deeply social media is woven into the fabric of your daily life, You can then begin to consciously decide how you want that relationship to look in the future. You can start to bring intention to your habits, your choices, your time. It all begins with the simple act of noticing. Noticing that a quick scroll has become an automatic, unconscious behavior. Noticing that the content of your thoughts is often directly shaped by what you've just seen on your screen. Noticing that time, that beautiful, finite, and powerful resource we all share, is slipping through your fingers. Not because you chose to waste it, but because you didn't even see it go. So, for the rest of today, I invite you to just observe. Not with guilt, but with the mindset of a curious scientist studying a fascinating subject. How many times do you reach for your phone? How long do you stay on it once you've picked it up? And most importantly, how do you feel before you start scrolling? And how do you feel after you put it down? These small, simple questions can open very big doors. Because when we see our habits clearly, we can choose differently. And that is where all meaningful change begins. Let's now delve into one of the greatest paradoxes of our modern age, something that nearly all of us experience on an emotional level, but very few of us take the time to fully understand. Thanks to the power of social media, we are, in theory, more connected to each other than at any other point in human history. We can send an instant message to a friend on the opposite side of the planet. We can peer into the daily lives of people we admire, their birthdays, their weddings, their travels, their simple, everyday moments, all without ever being in the same room, or even the same country. We can follow the thoughts of our favorite artists, writers, scientists, and leaders in real time. And yet, despite this constant, overwhelming sense of connection, study after study shows that people are reporting higher levels of loneliness than ever before. How can this be? How is it possible to be perpetually surrounded by a sea of digital connection and still feel profoundly, achingly isolated? The truth is that social media is a classic double-edged sword. On one side, it offers breathtaking opportunities for communication, community, inspiration, and creativity. It can be a lifeline for those who feel isolated in their physical communities, but on the other side, it can quietly and insidiously cultivate a deep sense of disconnection, not only from other people, but from our own authentic selves. And at the very heart of that disconnection lies a subtle, corrosive emotional pattern: comparison. You had almost certainly heard the old saying, "Comparison is the thief of joy." And there is perhaps no place on earth where this is more demonstrably true than on the endlessly scrolling feeds of social media. You're scrolling through your feed on a quiet evening. You see a former colleague celebrating a major promotion at a job you once wanted. Someone else is on a breathtaking vacation in a tropical paradise. The sand is perfect. The water is a perfect shade of turquoise. Their smile is perfect. Another person just announced they've bought their first house, or gotten engaged, or published a book. And then there's you, sitting on your sofa, perhaps still in your pajamas, feeling tired after a long day, and suddenly wondering if your life is somehow falling behind. Even if you were feeling perfectly content just moments before, a wave of self-doubt begins to creep in. Am I doing enough with my life? Am I as successful as I should be? Is my life as interesting, as beautiful, as theirs? This is the inherent danger of what we can call curated realities. What we witness on social media is never the full, unvarnished picture of a person's life. It is the highlight reel. It is like watching a sports recap that only shows the spectacular goals, never the missed shots, the painful injuries, or the grueling, monotonous hours of training. Most people, quite naturally, share only their best moments. They share the photos with the most flattering lighting, the good news, the witty, carefully crafted caption. There's nothing inherently malicious about this. We all have a natural desire to present ourselves and our lives in a positive light. The problem arises when we start to compare our real, messy, complex lives with all of our private struggles and mundane moments to someone else's highly edited, polished, and curated public version. We are creating an inherently unfair and unwinnable comparison. And this unfair comparison is the breeding ground for FOMO, the fear of missing out. FOMO is much more than just a trendy acronym. It is a genuine and painful emotional experience that can trigger powerful feelings of inadequacy, anxiety, and even a low-grade depression. You see other people doing things you aren't doing, living a life that seems more exciting than the one you're living. And suddenly, the good things you do have don't feel like enough anymore. It's not that you have actually lost anything tangible. It's that the powerful illusion of someone else's perfect life has made your own perfectly good life feel smaller, less significant. But here is the fundamental truth that so often gets lost in the endless scroll. You are never, ever seeing the full story. You are not seeing what's happening behind the scenes. You are not seeing the arguments, the financial worries, the moments of crippling self-doubt, the deep insecurities. You are only seeing the tiny fraction of reality that people have chosen to show you. This immense pressure to keep up can push people to maintain appearances, to perform a version of happiness, even when they are struggling immensely behind the curtain of the screen. You might find yourself posting something, not because it feels genuinely meaningful to you, but because you feel a social pressure to contribute, to show that your life is also exciting and full. Or you might begin to measure your self-worth by the number of likes, comments, and shares your posts receive, forgetting that these fleeting digital metrics have absolutely no bearing on your real, intrinsic value as a human being. This constant, exhausting chase for external validation, for a round of digital applause, can leave you feeling emotionally drained and hollow, even if your online profile looks vibrant and full of joy. And here is another, deeper question to consider. How many of your online connections actually feel like genuine, supportive, real connections? You might have hundreds, or even thousands, of followers or friends. But how many of them truly know what you're going through on a difficult day? How many people could you pick up the phone and call if you were in real trouble, and trust that they would be there for you? That is the great paradox. We are more visible to more people than ever before, but in many cases, we are less truly seen. Social media, in this sense, is both a blessing and a curse. It gives us incredible access to amazing people, world-changing ideas, and diverse experiences. It helps us stay in touch with loved ones who are far away, and allows us to find niche communities of people who share our passions. communities we might never find otherwise. But if we are not mindful, it also becomes a trap that encourages us to chase the feeling of connection through the toxic lens of comparison. And in doing so, we forget the profound importance of depth, of honesty, and of simple, undivided, emotional presence. So, what can we do? We can begin by cultivating a habit of emotional self-awareness. How do you actually feel when you are using social media? Does it leave you feeling uplifted and inspired? Or does it leave you feeling less than? Do you feel a sense of creative energy or a sense of insecurity? Are you posting because you have something meaningful you want to share with the world? Or because you feel a need to prove something to someone? These are not questions designed to make you judge yourself. They are questions designed to help you understand yourself. And understanding is always the first, essential step toward making more conscious, life-affirming choices. Another incredibly helpful practice is to actively remind yourself of this simple truth. You never see the whole picture. No matter how perfect, how glamorous, how effortless someone's life may appear online, there is always more happening behind the screen. Every single person has struggles. Every beautiful smile has a complex story behind it. Every perfect photograph has a frame. And there is always a messy, uncurated reality that exists just outside of it. You can also remind yourself that success, happiness, and fulfillment are not limited resources. Just because someone else is shining brightly does not mean that your light is any less brilliant. We are not in a competition. We are all just complex human beings, trying to find our own way through this beautiful and challenging life. And real connection, the kind of deep, nourishing connection that feeds your spirit, doesn't come from a quick scroll or a double tap. It comes from presence, from vulnerability, from the courage to be fully, honestly, and imperfectly yourself, both online and offline. So the next time you feel yourself slipping down that rabbit hole of comparison, just pause, take a slow, deep breath, and come back home to yourself. You are not behind. You are not missing out. You are exactly where you need to be, on your own unique path. And that is more than enough. Let's take another pause now and ask a question that is at once deeply personal and yet surprisingly universal in our digital age. Who are you? Online. I don't just mean your name or your username. I mean your digital identity, your online persona. What specific parts of your personality, your life, your thoughts, do you choose to share with the world? And just as importantly, what parts do you consciously or unconsciously keep hidden? What is the image of yourself that you are carefully constructing? Post by post, story by story, comment by comment. Social media has given our generation something that no previous generation in history has ever had: the ability to actively architect and broadcast our identity in real time to a potentially global audience. Every single photograph we post, every caption we write, every emoji we use is a small brushstroke on a much larger digital canvas. It is a version of ourselves that we are presenting to the world. But here is where things get interesting and complicated. That online version of us may not always be an accurate reflection of who we are in our offline, day-to-day lives. And sometimes, the gap, the chasm, between our online self and our real self can grow larger and more significant than we'd like to admit. This brings us to a crucial distinction that we must understand: the difference between authenticity and performance. Authenticity is about being true to who you are at your core. It means showing up in the world, both online and off, in an honest way, without a constant need to impress others or to fit into a particular mold. It's about coherence between your inner self and your outer expression. Performance, on the other hand, is about playing a role. It is not necessarily being fake, but it is often carefully managed, curated, and directed. It is designed to achieve a certain effect, to entertain an audience, to attract attention, or to gain approval and validation. Now, take a moment to reflect on your own experience. When you decide to post something online, whether it's a photo from your weekend, a thought about a book you're reading, a short video, or a reaction to a news story, what is the primary motivation driving that choice? Is it a genuine desire to express something true about yourself? Or is it a desire to be seen in a certain way? As successful? As intelligent? As happy? As adventurous? Do you post who you truly are? Or do you post who you wish you were? This question is not intended to be a criticism. It is an invitation for honest reflection. Because the truth is, we all perform to some degree. We all edit our photos. We all choose the most flattering angles. We all rewrite our captions to sound just right. And that is not inherently a bad thing. It's a natural part of human interaction in a digital world. The danger arises when the performance becomes a mask that we can't take off. When we start to believe more in the character we are playing online than in the complex, multifaceted person we actually are. That is when we risk losing touch with our deeper, authentic self. It is remarkably easy to fall into this pattern. You might get a lot of positive feedback, a lot of likes and comments on a certain type of post. Maybe it's something funny, or glamorous, or deeply emotional, and suddenly you feel an unspoken pressure to repeat that performance. You begin to craft your online identity based not on what actually feels real and true to you, but on what you perceive others want to see. Over time, the online version of you can become a kind of character in a play, carefully scripted, costumed, and maintained for an audience. And yet, behind the glowing screen, you might feel something entirely different. You might feel disconnected, unsure of who you really are, or perhaps even exhausted by the relentless effort of always needing to be someone. This kind of emotional and psychological disconnect can create a subtle but persistent inner tension. You may project an image of unshakable confidence online, but feel riddled with insecurity in your private moments. You may write captions that overflow with joy and gratitude, but feel lost, lonely, or anxious on the inside. And when people respond positively only to your highlight reel, it can deepen the painful feeling that no one really knows or would accept the full, unedited you. What makes this even more challenging is that the very structure of social media often rewards performance over authenticity. Posts that are polished, dramatic, aesthetically perfect, or perfectly timed often receive far more attention. The algorithm, the code that governs visibility, favors engagement, not truth. This creates a strange and paradoxical situation. The more real and vulnerable you are, the more you risk being ignored by the system. But the more you perform, the more visible you become. even if that visibility doesn't feel honest or fulfilling. This raises a much deeper question, not just for us as individuals, but for our society as a whole. If our identities are increasingly being shaped by what performs well online, what kinds of people are we becoming? Are we learning to be more genuinely expressive, or just more strategically marketable? Are we building real, resilient self-esteem, or are we fostering a fragile dependency on the ever-shifting winds of external validation? Some people begin to notice that their very sense of self becomes dangerously entangled with their online presence. They check their notifications to feel valued. They compare their content and engagement metrics to others to feel successful. And without ever meaning to, they hand over a crucial piece of their identity, of their self-worth, to the digital world. Who they are begins to depend on how others react to them online. And that is a fragile and precarious way to live. But here is the good news. The moment we become aware of this pattern, we gain the power to choose differently. You can make a conscious decision to use social media as a tool for authentic expression, not just for performance. You can choose to post things that genuinely matter to you, even if they don't get 1,000 likes. You can schedule regular digital breaks, time to disconnect from the online world and reconnect with your offline self. And most importantly, you can constantly remind yourself that your worth as a human being is not, and will never be, defined by your digital image. Let me say that again, because it is so important. Your worth is not defined by your digital image, not by the number of your followers, not by the number of your likes, not by the quality of your comments. You are infinitely more than your profile. So I invite you to ask yourself, what kind of digital identity am I creating? Does it reflect who I truly am? Or just who I think others want me to be? Does it help me feel more connected to myself? Or more confused about who I am? These are not easy questions, but they are essential ones, especially in a world where our identity is no longer a private matter, but something that is constantly performed, observed, judged, and evaluated. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We need the courage to be honest, the awareness to reflect, and the wisdom to protect the precious parts of ourselves that don't need to be shared with the world, to be real. In the end, authenticity doesn't mean sharing every single detail of your life. It simply means that what you do choose to share is rooted in your truth. And when you live from that place of integrity, both online and offline, you cultivate a stronger, more resilient, and more peaceful sense of self. One that doesn't need to perform, because it already knows that it belongs. Let's take a collective breath and gently shift our focus inward, towards something that often gets pushed to the sidelines in our conversations about social media: our mental health. In recent years, a growing number of people, from all walks of life, have begun to notice a quiet, creeping sense of exhaustion. It's not a physical tiredness from a hard day's work or a strenuous workout. It's a mental and emotional fatigue, a kind of invisible weight that comes from constant connection, constant input, and the relentless, unspoken pressure to be seen, to be noticed, and to be validated online. At first glance, social media can seem harmless, even beneficial for our well-being. You open an app, scroll through some updates from friends, like a few beautiful photos, Maybe watch a short, entertaining video. It can feel like a welcome break, a moment to unwind and disconnect from your immediate stressors. But over time, this seemingly light and frivolous activity can lead to deeper, more significant emotional and cognitive consequences. And many of us only start to notice these effects when they have already begun to manifest in our lives as increased anxiety, a reduced attention span, unpredictable mood swings, difficulty sleeping, or even a profound sense of disconnection from our own lives and feelings. One of the major contributing factors is a phenomenon known as attention fatigue. Your brain, much like any muscle in your body, has finite resources. It can only process a certain amount of information at once before it becomes overwhelmed. But in the digital environment, you are constantly bombarded with notifications, sensational headlines, flashing videos, incoming messages, and an endless stream of comments. Your attention is pulled in a dozen different directions simultaneously. And slowly but surely, it becomes harder to concentrate on a single task. It becomes more difficult to finish projects that require deep focus, and it becomes almost impossible to simply enjoy quiet, simple moments without feeling a restless urge to check your phone. You begin to lose your sense of mental presence. Your mind starts jumping erratically from one thought to the next, not because you want it to, but because it has been systematically trained to do so by the very architecture of the platforms you use. Another invisible pattern at play is related to something neuroscientists call the dopamine feedback loop. Dopamine is a powerful neurotransmitter in the brain that is closely linked to motivation, pleasure, and reward. Every single time you receive a notification, a like on your photo, a positive comment, or a new follower, your brain releases a small burst of dopamine. It feels good for a fleeting moment. And because it feels good, your brain begins to crave it. This craving prompts you to check your phone more and more often, hoping for that next little hit of digital reward. But like any short-term pleasure, the effect is temporary and diminishes over time. You start to need more frequent, more intense stimulation just to feel the same level of excitement. And if the rewards, the likes and comments, don't come as frequently as you've become accustomed to, you may feel a sense of anxiety, disappointment, or emptiness, even if you can't consciously articulate why you're feeling that way. This powerful neurological loop is part of what keeps people scrolling late into the night, even when they are physically and mentally exhausted. It's what makes you instinctively pick up your phone during a quiet moment in a conversation, instead of simply being present with the person in front of you. It's what can turn a tool designed for connection into a cycle of dependence. A dependence not just on the platform itself, but on the feeling of being seen and acknowledged. Alongside these neurological patterns, there's another, more emotional issue that is often harder to talk about: loneliness. It may sound counterintuitive, but spending more time on social media can actually make people feel lonelier. Why? Because while it creates the powerful illusion of social connection, it doesn't always provide the depth, the nuance, or the genuine presence that real, nourishing emotional connection requires. You might interact with dozens, even hundreds, of people in a single day through comments and messages, but still end the day feeling completely unseen. You might be liked by hundreds of people, but still feel fundamentally unknown. This kind of shallow, high-volume, low-quality connection doesn't nourish the human heart. In fact, it often leaves it feeling even hungrier for something real. And then there is the problem of cognitive overload. This is the feeling of having far too much mental input, too much data, and not nearly enough emotional or mental space to process it all. The constant stream of news headlines, political arguments, celebrity gossip, and endless content from creators all over the world. Your brain is trying to sort through it all, to make sense of it, but it simply can't keep up. This overload can lead to decision fatigue, making even simple choices feel overwhelming. It can lead to emotional numbness, where you stop feeling much of anything at all. Or it can lead to full-blown burnout. You stop asking yourself the important question, what do I truly think about this? And you start reacting automatically, reflexively. You consume more information, but feel less connected to it. You respond more frequently, but reflect less deeply. All of these factors contribute to the formation of what psychologists call limiting beliefs. These are subconscious, negative ideas that we begin to accept as truth about ourselves, often shaped by constant social comparison and repeated exposure to unrealistic and unattainable standards of beauty, success, and happiness. You might start to believe that you're not interesting enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough, not because any of that is objectively true, but because you are constantly inundated with images of people who seem to have it all. The more we see others appearing to live perfect, frictionless lives, the easier it becomes to question the validity and worth of our own. These beliefs don't shout at you, they whisper. But over time, those whispers can become a dominant part of our inner voice. So let me ask you something, and I genuinely encourage you to pause and answer this question honestly, even if it's just to yourself. When was the last time you did something offline, purely for the joy of the experience itself? Not for the photo you could post on Instagram, not to share a story about it, not to prove anything to anyone, not to capture it for your digital archive, but simply to enjoy it. A walk in nature with no photos taken, a delicious meal savored with no post composed, a moment of creative expression with no audience in mind. If it has been a while, please know that you are not alone. Many of us have become so accustomed to sharing every aspect of our lives that we have forgotten how to be fully present with ourselves, without the subtle pressure to perform or document the experience. Reclaiming that space, that simple, quiet, offline space, is a radical act of self-care in the modern world. It is not about deleting your apps or rejecting technology wholesale. It is about learning to fiercely protect your mental space and to reconnect with your own emotional needs. It's about giving your nervous system a much-needed break from the constant buzz and stimulation of digital life, and remembering that true peace and contentment don't come from constant input. They come from depth, from slowness, and from stillness. You can start with very small steps. Take a 10-minute walk without your phone. Spend the first 15 minutes of your day in silence before opening any apps. Write down your thoughts in a physical journal. Call a friend to hear their voice instead of just sending a text. These are not magic solutions. They are starting points, but they help to rebuild your sense of inner calm. your internal locus of control, and they remind your brain what it feels like to rest, to focus, and to connect in a deep and meaningful way. Because at the end of the day, social media is not just a screen you look at. It is a space you inhabit, mentally, emotionally, and socially. And like any space you live in, it shapes you. So make sure it's a space where your well-being has room to breathe. Whether we are consciously aware of it or not, social media is no longer just a tool we use to communicate. It has become a primary lens through which many of us perceive the world. And at times, it acts as a powerful mirror, reflecting our own beliefs and biases back to us with startling intensity. One of the most profound, yet subtle ways this transformation occurs is through the creation of what are known as echo chambers. These are digital environments curated by algorithms, where we are predominantly exposed to opinions, information, and perspectives that confirm what we already believe. The complex algorithms that power these platforms are designed with one core purpose: to keep us engaged for as long as possible. They meticulously study our behavior, our likes, our clicks, our shares, even the amount of time we linger on a particular video. Based on this vast collection of data, they curate our feeds, prioritizing content that they predict will resonate with us emotionally. While this level of personalization might seem convenient and enjoyable at first, it can gradually and invisibly isolate us from differing viewpoints. It can turn our social media feed from a potential window to the world into a one-sided stream of self-validation. This is how filter bubbles emerge. You begin to see the same kinds of opinions, the same narratives, the same interpretations of events repeated over and over again, creating a powerful illusion that everyone thinks this way. But that is the trick of the algorithm. It isn't showing you a representative sample of the world. It is showing you a highly tailored, personalized version of the world, designed to keep you comfortable and clicking. This process is not necessarily driven by malicious intent, but its implications for a functioning democracy and a cohesive society are incredibly serious. In a world that depends on critical thinking, empathy, and the ability to understand diverse perspectives, being unknowingly confined within a digital echo chamber can severely narrow our intellectual horizons and make us far more susceptible to groupthink. The psychological phenomenon, where the deep-seated desire for harmony or conformity within a group leads to irrational or dysfunctional decision-making. As these filter bubbles solidify, societal polarization intensifies. It's no longer just a matter of people disagreeing on policy or ideas. It's that they begin to see those on the other side as not just wrong, but as irrational, immoral, or even evil. Online, disagreements frequently escalate into personal attacks. Nuance, the ability to see the gray areas in a complex issue, is often the first casualty. Emotional reactivity becomes the default mode of communication. Comments become more aggressive. Posts become more performative and tribal, and users are drawn into a self-perpetuating cycle of outrage, which the algorithm then rewards with more visibility. This is especially evident in the arenas of politics, social justice, and contentious cultural debates. A simple scroll through your feed during an election season or a major global crisis can starkly reveal just how deeply divided we have become. not just in our opinions, but in our perceived facts, our language, and even our most basic shared values. One of the most troubling consequences of this digital polarization is the rampant and rapid spread of misinformation and disinformation. False claims, digitally manipulated images, and deliberately misleading headlines travel at the speed of light, often far faster than the carefully fact-checked truth. Why does this happen? Because sensational, shocking, and emotionally charged content generates powerful reactions, which in turn leads to more clicks, more shares, and more visibility. The algorithm, once again, rewards engagement, not accuracy. And while dedicated fact-checkers work tirelessly to debunk these false narratives, by the time the truth manages to put on its shoes, the lie has already sprinted around the world. The damage to public trust, to social cohesion, is often already done. What's more, the phenomenon of cancel culture, the practice of publicly shaming and professionally ostracizing individuals for actions or statements deemed offensive, has gained significant momentum in these hyperpolarized digital spaces. While holding people accountable for harmful behavior is crucial, the way this accountability often unfolds online can feel less like a thoughtful process of justice and more like digital mob rule. The immense complexity of a human being is often reduced to a single poorly phrased post or an old tweet taken out of context. People are labeled, shunned, and at times have their careers and reputations destroyed, not through a process of nuanced discussion, but through swift, widespread, and often unforgiving judgment. This adds yet another layer of fear and volatility to the already charged emotional climate on social platforms. It is critically important to realize that these online trends do not exist in a vacuum. They bleed into the real world. They shape how people vote. They influence how public policies are made. They affect how communities interact with one another. And they fundamentally alter the nature of public discourse. The rise of a new kind of digital tribalism, where users align themselves not just with ideas, but with inflexible, warring sides, diminishes our collective capacity to engage in open, good faith dialogue. It fosters a climate of us versus them, where empathy and intellectual humility are often viewed as signs of weakness, and where winning an argument becomes far more important than understanding another person's perspective. So, where does this leave us? Are we doomed to live in these fragmented digital silos, endlessly echoing only what we already believe to be true? Or is there a way to reclaim the promise of the Internet, to engage more consciously, more critically, and ultimately, more compassionately? The next time you find yourself scrolling through your feed, I urge you to ask yourself a simple question. Am I being informed right now? Or am I just being reinforced? Actively challenge yourself to seek out and read opinions from people you disagree with. Take a pause, a deep breath, before you reflexively share or repost something that feels sensational or enraging. Ask questions. Be curious. Because the more intentional and mindful we become about how we consume and interact with digital content, the more we can resist the powerful gravitational pull of polarization, and the more we can begin to reintroduce dialogue, nuance, and empathy into our collective digital spaces. Social media is a profoundly powerful force, one that is shaping not just our individual lives, but the very future of our societies. But it is not inherently good or evil. Like any tool, its ultimate impact depends entirely on how we choose to use it, and perhaps more importantly, how aware we are of its pervasive influence. Behind every scroll, every like, every share, lies a vast, complex, and carefully designed system of monetization that fuels the very existence of these social media platforms. It's crucial to understand that these platforms aren't simply digital public squares for expression and connection. They are massive corporations, deeply embedded within what economists and technologists call the attention economy. The core idea is deceptively simple, but its implications are powerful and far-reaching. Your attention, your focus, your time is the currency. Every single second you spend online, every click you make, every video you watch, is a transaction that feeds an immense ecosystem driven by data and profit. The longer you stay on a platform, the more advertisements they can show you. The more you engage with content, the more valuable your data profile becomes. Not to you, but to them. You are not the customer. You are the product being sold. This leads us to a critical and often overlooked reality of the modern internet. If the service is free, you are the product. It's a phrase you have probably heard before. But have you ever truly paused to consider its profound meaning? These platforms track your online behavior with astonishing precision. Your likes, your search history, your location, your social connections, and they package this intimate information to sell to advertisers who want to reach you. It's not just what you actively post, but how long you pause on a video before scrolling away. Which topics make you angry enough to comment? Which types of images make you stop? Every single action, and even your inaction, becomes a data point in a massive psychological profile. And with enough data, the algorithms can begin to know you, in some ways, better than you know yourself. They can predict your moods, your interests, and even your future purchasing decisions. This collected data is then used to target you with an uncanny level of precision. The goal is to show you content and advertisements that will keep you hooked, keep you clicking, keep you buying. You might think your feed is a random and organic mix of entertainment and updates from your friends, but it is actually a highly customized, individually tailored stream of information meticulously designed to maximize your engagement. This is the fundamental business model of surveillance capitalism, a term used to describe how companies generate immense profits by extracting and analyzing your personal data, often without your full understanding or explicit consent, and then using that data to predict and shape your behavior. It sounds invasive, and it is. Yet, this entire system is wrapped in a beautiful package of user-friendly design, undeniable convenience, and endless entertainment, making it incredibly difficult to resist, or even to notice. Let's take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever been thinking about a product? Maybe a new pair of shoes or a vacation spot, and then suddenly seen advertisements for that exact thing all over your social media feeds? Or have you ever bought something you didn't really need, but it kept showing up in your feed over and over again until it felt almost impossible not to click Buy Now? That is not a coincidence. It is not magic. It is calculated, programmatic exposure driven by deep learning algorithms and powerful psychological insights. Your impulses are not just being observed, they are being actively influenced and manipulated. This raises serious ethical questions about personal autonomy, manipulation, and the right to privacy. Are we truly making free choices for ourselves, or are our desires being subtly nudged in directions that serve corporate interests? Moreover, these platforms don't just sell products like shoes and cars, they sell influence, political campaigns, social movements, corporate messaging. All of it flows through the very same monetized channels. Visibility, the ability to reach millions of people, can be bought. And because the algorithms are designed to reward content that sparks strong emotions, especially anger, fear, and outrage, what often spreads the fastest is not what is accurate, or thoughtful, or nuanced, but what is provocative, divisive, and polarizing. The end result is a society increasingly shaped not by what we need to know for our collective well-being, but by what keeps us clicking, watching, and arguing. There's a fascinating concept in behavioral economics called choice architecture. It's the idea that the way options are presented to us significantly influences the decisions we make. Social media platforms are master choice architects. The very layout of your feed, the placement of the like button, the timing and color of notifications. None of these design elements are random. They are all carefully crafted to steer your behavior in subtle ways, to increase your screen time and deepen your engagement. And while this might seem harmless on the surface, it becomes deeply concerning when this architecture is applied to our decisions about our health, our political beliefs, our relationships, or our personal identity. So, what can we do about it? First, we must become more critical and aware users. Simply understanding the business model behind the screen gives us the power to make more conscious choices. When you realize your attention is being actively harvested and sold, you begin to ask better questions. Do I really want to spend an hour of my life here? Why am I being shown this specific piece of content right now? Is this advertisement serving my needs, or am I serving its purpose? Second, we can advocate for greater transparency and regulation in the tech industry. As a society, we need to have a serious conversation about data rights and algorithmic accountability. As users, we have a voice, supporting ethical technology companies, using privacy-enhancing tools, and demanding more from these platforms can slowly begin to shift the landscape. Finally, let's always remember the human side of this digital world. Behind every piece of content, every profile, is a person, just like you, trying to find meaning, connection, or success. But when all of our human efforts are filtered through a system designed to exploit attention for profit, we risk losing something essential: our agency, our time, our values. So the next time you open an app, I encourage you to ask yourself not just, "What am I doing here?" but also, "Who profits from me being here?" Because the answer to that second question might reveal more about your experience than you expect. Despite the seemingly overwhelming presence of social media in our lives, and the powerful systems designed to keep us engaged, there is a growing movement, a quiet revolution, toward reclaiming our autonomy. It all begins with a fundamental shift in mindset, a shift from being a passive consumer to an active architect of our digital lives. It begins with recognizing that social media is a tool, not a tyrant. And just like any powerful tool, like a hammer or a chisel, It can be used to build or to break, to create beautiful things, or to cause harm. The key lies not in total rejection of the tool, but in its conscious and intentional engagement. It's about moving from the autopilot of habitual scrolling to the deliberate act of intentional use, from being pulled aimlessly by the digital current to confidently steering your own ship. In simple terms, it's about remembering that you are the driver, not the passenger. Many of us instinctively reach for our phones the moment we feel a flicker of boredom, the instant we wake up, or during even the briefest moments of stillness in our day. We scroll without thought, we react without pause, and we absorb more content in a single day than previous generations might have encountered in weeks or even months. As we've discussed, this is not by accident, it is by design. Social media platforms are meticulously engineered to maximize our engagement, using powerful psychological principles like intermittent reinforcement, the same principle that makes slot machines so addictive, to keep us hooked, to keep us coming back for more. But awareness is the first and most crucial step toward meaningful change. When we understand the mechanisms at play, when we see the invisible strings, we can begin to make more empowered choices. So, what does conscious use of social media look like in practice? It starts with establishing clear digital boundaries. This might mean setting specific timers on your apps, turning off all non-essential notifications, or deciding on particular times during the day when you will check social media, and then sticking to those times as you would any other appointment. It could also involve a digital declutter, intentionally unfollowing accounts that consistently leave you feeling drained, jealous, or inadequate. It means curating your feed to be a place that uplifts you, educates you, or entertains you in a meaningful way. Think of your feed less like a fire hose of random information, and more like a garden that you intentionally cultivate. You have the power to decide what grows there. It might also mean protecting your attention as if it were your most valuable asset, because in the attention economy, it is. Your focus is your currency, and you have the absolute right to spend it wisely. Another powerful strategy is to adopt the practice of mindful scrolling. Before you open an app, just pause for a single breath and ask yourself a simple question. Why am I going there right now? What am I hoping to get out of this? Is it a genuine desire to connect with someone? Or is it a reaction to boredom, loneliness, or a subtle feeling of anxiety? Often, we scroll not out of a real need, but out of a deeply ingrained habit. Bringing intention to this behavior is not about shaming yourself. It is about aligning your actions with your values. When our digital behaviors match our real-world intentions, we experience far less internal conflict and a much greater sense of emotional clarity and peace. Then there's the beautiful idea of creating screen-free rituals. These are intentional periods of time that you dedicate to being away from your devices, not as a form of punishment, but as an act of restoration. This could be as simple as taking a morning walk and leaving your phone at home. It could be reading a physical book for 20 minutes before bed, instead of scrolling through endless reels. Or it could be enjoying a simple meal with family or friends, with a no phones at the table rule. These moments reconnect us with the physical, tangible world. They give our overstimulated minds a chance to process, to breathe, and to reset. After all, the true richness of life doesn't exist on a screen. It exists in your senses, in your relationships, in your quiet, unobserved reflections. Of course, none of this is about achieving perfection. There will be days when you fall back into old habits, and that is perfectly okay. The goal is not to disconnect completely and permanently from the digital world. The goal is to reconnect with your real life in a more meaningful way. The question to reflect on is this: could you be more intentional without completely disconnecting? This doesn't require a dramatic digital detox or deleting every single app from your phone. It simply requires presence. It asks you to notice how you feel after spending time online. Do you feel energized, informed, and inspired? Or do you feel anxious, numb, and scattered? Remember that small, consistent shifts create the most lasting change. Even a 10% increase in your awareness can lead to a significantly more peaceful, focused, and self-respecting life. The challenge we face is not a technical one, it is a psychological one. It is about reclaiming ownership over your attention, your time, and ultimately, your identity. Social media does not get to define who you are or how you feel. You do. You get to decide how you show up online, and more importantly, how you show up for yourself when you are offline. In the end, it's not about quitting the digital world, it's about participating in it with your eyes wide open and your values fully intact. It's about remembering that real life, your one precious life, happens in the here and now, not just in the feed. You are not a passive consumer of content. You are a conscious creator of your life. And every post, every pause, every conscious choice is an opportunity to take back control, not just of your screen, but of your story. As we come to the end of this thought-provoking journey through the many layers of social media, it's time to pause one last time, not just to look back on what we've discussed, but to look within. Over the course of our conversation, we've uncovered just how deeply intertwined social media has become with our personal identities, our mental health, and even the very structures of our society. We've explored the paradox of how platforms designed for connection can often end up distorting it, leaving us feeling more alone than ever. We've examined how the pressure to perform an idealized version of ourselves online can create a painful gap between our digital persona and our true, authentic self. We've seen how the invisible hand of the algorithm shapes not only what we see, but what we come to believe. And we've pulled back the curtain on the business model that treats our time and our attention as a valuable currency in an economy we rarely stop to think about. But now, the real work and the real question begins. What do we do with this awareness? How do we, as conscious, thinking, feeling human beings, move forward in a world saturated with these digital tools, but with more clarity, more balance, and a greater sense of purpose? This is not a final call to delete all your accounts or to go live in a cabin in the woods, though for some, that might be a valid choice. Rather, it is a heartfelt invitation, from me to you, to reevaluate your relationship with the digital world, to ask yourself some honest questions. What kind of online presence truly serves your well-being? And not just your public image? What kind of digital content adds genuine meaning and value to your life, rather than merely filling the silence? What kind of boundaries would help you feel more grounded, more present, and more joyful in your real, physical life? Even as you remain digitally connected, awareness is a powerful first step, but awareness alone is not enough. It must be paired with agency. Agency is the active, conscious decision to take control. It is the choice to scroll with intention, to curate your feed with care, to follow fewer people but to listen more deeply, and perhaps most importantly, to spend more time simply being in the world, rather than broadcasting your experience of it. What we need is not necessarily a complete disconnection, but a cultivated sense of discernment. The wisdom to know when to engage, and when to step back and protect our peace. So I leave you with this final thought to carry with you. What kind of relationship do you want to have with your online world? And what kind of relationship do you want to have with your real one? That is not a simple question, and it won't have a quick or easy answer, but simply starting to ask it, to live with that question, might be the most important step you can take toward a more balanced, more fulfilling, and more mentally healthy life in this digital age. Remember, your digital world is not something that is just happening to you. It is something you are actively participating in, shaping, and co-creating. Every single time you log in, you have more control than you think, and perhaps more responsibility than you often realize. Never underestimate your power to change your digital habits, and in doing so, to change your daily experience of being alive. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of English in Fluency, where we explore not only the language we speak, but the lives we live. If you found this reflection valuable, consider listening to it again, or perhaps speaking your own thoughts on these topics aloud to practice your fluency. You could even share this episode with a friend or a loved one and start your own meaningful conversation. And of course, if you want to continue exploring these kinds of big ideas with me, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. That way, you won't miss our next conversation. Until next time, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and most of all, stay present.